Who's the real face of the NFL, and who actually runs it? Those two answers aren't always the same, because while star players might dominate the spotlight, the person with the most power in football is Roger Goodell. Since 2006, Goodell has overseen the league through some of its biggest scandals, from bounty programs and deflated footballs,
I didn't hold to the ball in any way,
to domestic violence cases, national anthem protests, and the growing crisis around player safety. Through it all, he's been the one making the calls and taking the heat.
Management rather than moral clarity?
But how did Goodell rise from an intern to the most powerful man in American sports? And how is a man in the center of so much controversy held onto that power? This is the story of Roger Goodell. Before his rise and the controversies, Roger Goodell was just a kid from upstate New York. Goodell was born on February 19, 1959, in Jamestown, New York, to father Charles Ellsworth Goodell, a former United States Senator, and mother Jean. Goodell attended Bronxville High School in Westchester County, New York, and was a three-sport athlete in high school, playing football, basketball, and baseball. Roger's leadership skills and athletic acumen were evident early on, as he captained all three sports teams in high school and was named the school's Athlete of the Year as a senior. Unfortunately, Goodell's college career never happened, as injuries prevented him from competing at the collegiate level, but he did attend Washington and Jefferson College in Washington, Pennsylvania, graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Economics. Upon graduation, Roger was gainfully employed by the NFL, not as commissioner, of course, but as an administrative intern. Everyone has to start somewhere. In the early days, Roger spent his time clipping and copying news articles in the public relations department, but it didn't take long for his talents to be recognized. 5 years after joining the NFL, Roger was appointed to assistant to the president of the American Football Conference, otherwise known as the AFC, in 1987, and by 2001, worked his way to executive vice president and chief operations officer of the league. When Paul Tagliabue retired, Goodell was named a frontrunner to succeed him after first ballots, but needed to be elected by the league's owners before taking the position of commissioner. In the second and third ballots, Goodell and Greg Levy were the only individuals to receive votes, with Levy getting 14 to Goodell's 17. In the fourth round of balloting, Goodell increased his lead to 21-10 over Levy, falling one vote shy of the necessary 22 to gain election. After the final wave of voting, Roger gained 2 more votes, winning 23-8, and became the next commissioner of the NFL. If you're wondering why the votes in each round only added up to 31, that would be because the Raiders, interestingly, elected not to vote in each round. Following the election, Roger took over as commissioner on September 1st, 2006, and from that point forward, his tenure would be anything but silky smooth. In 2007, Roger's first major move as commissioner was to end the NFL in Europe, which, as many of you older NFL fans remember, had 5 of 6 European teams based in Germany. The league ran for a total of 11 years under Tagliabue. Ending the NFL in Europe was, actually, probably a smart financial move for the NFL, but was far from the most polarizing decision of Roger's career, and in fact, was simply the beginning. That same year, Roger faced his first backlash as NFL commissioner for his response to the Patriots Spygate scandal, which we go over in more detail in our Brady video. The scandal implicated the Patriots organization, and more importantly, head coach Bill Belichick, who was found guilty of illegally taping the opposing team's signals during games. Goodell's response to the matter was highly criticized, and his inexperience in the position became evident when he elected to have the tapes destroyed. Ultimately, Congress got involved, and Goodell met with Senator Arlen Specter privately about the matter. In the end, no serious repercussions for Goodell's actions came about, but heavy fines and penalties were levied against the Patriots, including a $500,000 fine for coach Bill Belichick and the loss of a first-round draft pick. After nearly 5 years of relatively problem-free leadership as head of the NFL, Roger faced difficult decisions once again, when the NFL world was shocked by the Saints' Bountygate scheme. The program centered around defensive coordinator Greg Williams and the 2009 to 2011 New Orleans Saints. During this era of Saints football, players were paid from a bounty pool that was built by the Saints coaches. Players received cash compensation at varying levels, based on the type of injury they inflicted on opposing players. They received $500 for forcing a player to leave the game for a series or receiving medical attention, $1,000 for knocking a player out of the game or forcing them to get carted off, and $1,500 for knocking out the opposing team's quarterback. The investigation, led by Goodell, relied on whistleblowers, league sources, and emails, and the fallout, which came to a head in 2012, was significant. Head coach Sean Payton was suspended for the entire 2012 season. Defensive coordinator Greg Williams, the ringleader, was suspended indefinitely, although he was reinstated in 2013. GM Mickey Loomis was suspended 8 games, assistant coach Joe Vitt was suspended 6 games, and 4 players, most notably Jonathan Vilma, were suspended varying lengths. Vilma was the most publicized due to his reported offering for any player who injured quarterback Brett Favre during the 2009 NFC Championship game. The offering was stated to be $10,000 for anyone who knocked the Viking star quarterback out of the game, which, looking back at the litany of big hits Favre took during the game and the number of injuries he dealt with, makes all the more sense. On top of the suspensions, Goodell and the NFL fined the Saints $500,000 and 2 second-round draft picks, one in 2012 and another in 2013. The reaction to Goodell's disciplinary response was mixed. Some lauded the commissioner for his staunch stance on the matter, stating that his emphasis on player safety was noteworthy, while others criticized Goodell for overreaching, saying that Rodgers' punishments for players without the opportunity to defend themselves was out of bounds. In response, the NFLPA fought back, hard, and appealed Goodell's punishment for the players. Goodell appointed his mentor and former NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue to oversee the appeal. Tagliabue decided to overturn Goodell's suspensions, stating that while the program existed and was inappropriate, the coaches were more at fault. Goodell stood by his decisions. Bountygate was significant, not just because of the impact it had on player safety, but on the evolution of Roger Goodell, and marked the beginning of the Goodell as a disciplinarian era. 2 years later, Goodell found himself in another pickle. Ray Rice. Remember him? The star running back for the Baltimore Ravens? I'm sure you know where this is going. In 2014, Rice was arrested and charged with third-degree assault. The NFL received videotape of Rice assaulting his fiancée, and the video was jaw-dropping. After a quote-unquote thorough investigation, Goodell's response was a 2-game suspension. The norm at the time for nonviolent crimes or lesser offenses for first-time offenders was 2 games, and it looked as though that was going to be Rice's punishment, until the video got leaked by TMZ. Then Goodell found himself in a world of problems. After the videotape was made public, and people realized the incident was much more serious than what was being let on, Goodell was forced to up the ante on his punishment for Rice, suspending the running back indefinitely. The initial leniency by Goodell was highly criticized, and caused many to criticize the league as well, given the cast of characters that had graced the gridiron in years past. The players' union supported Goodell's decision, stating that it was fair due to past precedent, but the Baltimore Ravens terminated Rice's contract. Rice appealed Goodell's decision to increase the punishment, and won, after it was determined that Roger and the NFL violated the collective bargaining agreement by increasing the penalty only after the videotape was released. In the end, the best thing that came from the Ray Rice situation was the commitment made by the NFL and Roger Goodell to combat domestic violence. The NFL changed their policy, with first-time offenders now receiving a 6-game suspension, and later amended the policy to include a permanent ban for second-time offenders. While the end result was a good one for the league, in that the policy now levied greater penalties for players who committed acts of domestic violence, the damage to Rodgers' reputation had been done, with many losing faith and trust in him due to his response before and after the tape had been leaked.
He blamed himself.
A year later, more problems would follow. Like we said, Goodell's tenure as commissioner has been anything but smooth sailing. In 2015, Deflategate happened, with the Patriots once again at the forefront. The Deflategate scandal, which we also cover in our Brady video, implicated the star quarterback and an equipment manager for the Patriots. During the 2015 AFC Championship game against the Colts, it was found that the Patriots' footballs were below regulation inflation level. The finding was that the Patriots, and more specifically Tom Brady, had deliberately deflated footballs during the game in order to try to gain some sort of competitive advantage. The Patriots won 45-7. Deflategate had a litany of issues, including involvement, once again, from Congress, and even resulted in Brady destroying his own cell phone. Goodell's response was a 4-game suspension for Brady, a $1 million fine for the quarterback, and the Patriots were stripped of their first-round draft pick. This whole debacle included a long legal battle, and even implicated Barstool Sports president and founder Dave Portnoy. Portnoy was very vocally supportive of quarterback Tom Brady throughout the entire scandal, and highly critical of Goodell. This support included the burning of a Roger Goodell jersey, calling the commissioner some choice names,
fraud and a criminal,
and a protest outside of NFL headquarters. in which he and 3 other Barstool employees handcuffed themselves to the building and refused to leave until they were arrested and escorted away by authorities. These actions were like adding gasoline to the fire that was Barstool Sports at the time, and further helped the media platform add to their already massive following. The inevitable end to the Deflategate saga was the upholding of Brady's suspension, and a decade-long rivalry between Goodell and Portnoy, which included Portnoy winning an auction bid to share a suite with Goodell, and Roger refused to uphold his end of the bargain, with the NFL citing a background check failure. Truly wild stuff. A year later in 2016, the Colin Kaepernick saga began. Before a preseason game in 2016, Kaepernick protested the national anthem by kneeling, with the goal of bringing attention to police brutality against Black Americans. Kaepernick's explanation about his decision to kneel during the anthem was that he had not intended it to be a protest against the military or the flag, but rather a demonstration against racial injustice and police violence. The fallout from this and the further protests could make up an entire video on its own, so let's just stick to Goodell's involvement and the response to the actions. Roger initially didn't comment on the issue and avoided it altogether, but the media storm that ensued made it impossible for the commissioner to sit this one out, so initially, Roger found a middle ground. He stated that the NFL supported players' rights to express themselves, but that they were not in favor of protests during the national anthem. He made it known that he would address the situation, but that the league would not punish players for exercising their rights to free speech. By the end of the 2016 season, Kaepernick was out of the NFL. In 2017, the situation became politically charged, and in order to avoid this video becoming politically polarizing, we'll avoid commenting on that further. Just know that ultimately, fans and owners were upset at Goodell for not taking a staunch stance on the matter. In 2018, action finally came, and the situation reached a boiling point. In May of 2018, the NFL instated a new anthem policy, stating that players must either stand for the anthem or remain in the locker room. This was, again, highly criticized, obviously, as the issue at its core was polarizing. The rule stated that teams would choose their own disciplinary actions for players who protested, with some teams fining players who elected to do so. Goodell supported the policy change.
We want people to be respectful of the national anthem. We want people to stand.
But did say he would work with players to better understand their concerns. By this point, Kaepernick had been out of the league for over a year, and many were critical of the NFL for their treatment towards players who protest, stating that the league's ownership was blackballing Cap for protesting the anthem. In 2020, during the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement for George Floyd and social injustice, Goodell apologized for his initial tone on the matter and stated that the NFL was wrong from their initial response to the issue and that they should have listened to the players sooner. As a result, the NFL launched their Inspire Change campaign to fight social inequality with social justice message promotions in the end zones. At the end of everything, opinions on Goodell's responsiveness were, again, polarized, with some agreeing with the way he handled the situation and others critical. A little before the Kaepernick situation, Goodell and the NFL also came under fire for CTE and player safety, which is still ongoing. This is another situation that could be an entire video on its own, but we'll highlight the most important aspects. The lawsuit actually began in 2011, when a group of 4,500 former players filed a class action lawsuit against the NFL for negligence, fraud, and failing to protect players. The lawsuit, like any lawsuit, took a while to be resolved, but the players were awarded a $1 billion settlement in 2015, around the same time the movie Concussion was released in theaters. Goodell and the NFL responded to the public relations nightmare that ensued. They were forced to acknowledge the reality of brain injuries and CTE, something that had long denied or minimized. In response, they changed the NFL's concussion policy, bringing in independent neurologists, increased scrutiny over concussion diagnoses, and protocols for players to return to play, with punishments to teams who didn't abide. In-game hits to the head became more severely penalized, and players are now fined after the games for illegal contact to the head and neck area. The NFL encouraged and enforced the use of guardian caps during training camp, and legalized them for wear during in-game play. The concussion situation with the NFL is still ongoing, and has been a difficult situation for Goodell and the NFL to navigate, but is obviously crucial for the longevity of the league. In 2021, Goodell faced the Deshaun Watson situation, where Watson was accused and sued by dozens of women for sexual assault. Again, Goodell faced scrutiny. When the accusations came out, an investigation ensued, and the leader of the investigation was Lisa Friel. Throughout all of this, the Browns traded for the star quarterback, handing over a boatload of first-round picks to the Texans and awarding the quarterback with a $230 million contract. At the conclusion of the investigation, the league levied their punishment against the superstar quarterback. Initially, Watson only faced a 6-game suspension that was handed down by Sue Robinson, but the league appealed. Goodell was not directly involved in the appeal, but oversaw it to ensure the league's position was accurately represented. When all was said and done, Watson was handed an 11-game suspension from the league and a $5 million fine. Once again, Roger was under fire for inconsistencies in punishment, a legacy that has haunted him throughout his entire tenure as commissioner. Around the same time as the Watson proceedings, the NFL and Goodell were also investigating the Washington Commanders for a toxic work environment. It all started with a bombshell Washington Post article alleging that there was sexual harassment and a toxic work environment within the Commanders organization under owner Dan Snyder. The allegations were against Snyder and senior executives, coaches, and personnel of the Commanders organization, stating that sexual harassment, misogyny, and workplace toxicity were occurring. The NFL and Goodell, once again, conducted an independent investigation with Beth Wilkinson at the head of it. And not surprisingly, given how things had played out in previous investigations, Goodell would come under fire. The public and media gripes were mostly in response to a lack of transparency from the NFL, which had become the norm with NFL investigations. The punishment for Snyder was a $10 million fine and his removal from overseeing day-to-day operations, which was taken over by his wife, Tanya Snyder. Then, in 2021, another bombshell dropped, this time from the New York Times. The article was about John Gruden, who was the coach of the Raiders at the time. The article highlighted emails Gruden had sent over several years, which included racist, homophobic, and sexist remarks, as well as highly critical comments about Roger Goodell. This led to Gruden's resignation, and many accusing Goodell of leaking the emails out of spite for the remarks Gruden made about him, although this was never proven. At the conclusion of everything, Gruden was out of the NFL, although he filed a lawsuit against the NFL. And Dan Snyder was all but forced to sell the Commanders. Since the last major controversy, many other things have popped up that Goodell has had to deal with. The major one is the Brian Flores lawsuit, which alleges racial discrimination led to his firing from the Miami Dolphins, although that lawsuit is still ongoing, and Flores has been back in the league as a defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. There's the Rashee Rice situation, the Justin Tucker situation, and many more issues that the NFL and Goodell has had to deal with in both the past and presently. Have Goodell's responses to all of the past issues been perfect? No, far from it. But he also has one of the toughest jobs in the world, handling a multi-billion-dollar corporation filled with superstar celebrities, all of varying personalities, agendas, and initiatives. Is he handsomely compensated for it? Of course. He's the NFL commissioner and makes roughly $64 million a year on his current salary. But ultimately, he is a human being, and responding to difficult situations perfectly every single time isn't possible for anyone. And no matter what course of action he took, he was always going to face some sort of scrutiny. On top of that, Goodell has done a lot of good for the league. He's strengthened the league's outreach globally, with games in Mexico, South America, and Europe. Roger has seen the salary cap increase at record numbers on his watch, and has overseen staggering financial growth for the league. He recently helped the league sign a $110 billion television agreement with Fox, CBS, NBC, and ESPN. NFL annual revenue has exploded under Goodell, going from $6 billion in 2006 to nearly $22 billion by 2022. He oversaw improved health and safety initiatives for players, especially with regard to concussions. The NFL improved social justice programs and drastically improved the NFL fan experience with the NFL Draft. The draft was held in New York for nearly 50 years, but under Goodell, that has changed. Now, the draft is in a new city every year, bringing in millions of dollars for local economies over a week-long period. Goodell is responsible for facilitating the expansion of the playoff from 12 teams to 14 teams, and increased the schedule to 17 games, providing even more revenue for the league. Last, and maybe most impressively, he successfully navigated the COVID-19 pandemic during the 2020 season. When other sports leagues, like the NBA in their bubble, were missing games or playing shortened seasons, the NFL didn't miss a single regular season game. a true testament to the logistical capabilities of the league and Roger Goodell's ability to manage the crisis. Look, everyone wants to hear about the struggles and scandals that have taken place under Goodell, because that's the interesting stuff. And while we've highlighted many of them in this video, it's impossible to cover everything that's happened in detail. Goodell's responses to the issues he's faced haven't always been the best, but he's navigated them and worked to learn from any mistakes he's made to positively benefit both the longevity of the league and its players. All things considered, Goodell has definitely made a positive impact on the league. That is undeniable. And while not everyone will agree, the league has tried to evolve with changing times. At the end of the day, the NFL is going to be the NFL. It's filled with high net worth celebrities playing a brutally physical game. Bad things are going to happen. They're going to be covered, and Roger is going to have to respond to them and face whatever backlash comes his way. That's his job.